There are nights that look quiet from the outside, but inside, nothing feels quiet at all. You lie there, a small lamp casting its light on the ceiling, your breath steady, yet your mind refuses to rest with your body. It turns old moments over and over again, the glances you misunderstood, the slow replies, the silences that made you uneasy in ways no one ever noticed. There is something smoldering inside you, not quite pain, but not light enough to ignore. Night has its own way of revealing the things we hide from ourselves during the day. A tiredness you cannot name. A feeling that you've been tied to other people's moods more than you thought. A small sadness, harmless on the surface, but quietly pulling you away from yourself. And if tonight you feel that way, welcome to Lucid Dream, Sleep, and Science Stories. This is a place where you don't have to be strong. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't have to pretend you're fine. All you need to do is lie still, breathe a little slower, and let me sit beside you, like an old friend you haven't seen in a long time. Here, we tell small stories, pieces of memory, hidden disappointments, and the quiet moments no one ever witnessed. And somewhere within those stories, a bit of Stoic philosophy slips in, soft as a breath. No advice, no instructions, just companionship, and a few thoughts you can feel in your own way. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Many things harm us only because we grant them the power to do so." Maybe tonight you'll understand this line in a very personal way. No rush, no pressure to change anything. Just allow your heart to loosen a little and let the story begin. Tonight, we step into a journey of gently cutting the invisible strings that make you react to the world before you even react to yourself, so you can return to a quiet place inside that you lost somewhere along the way. Are you ready? If you are, close your eyes and let the first chapter slowly unfold. Maybe tonight you're like this too. Nothing big happened. It's just that inside, something feels off, as if part of you has been living through other people's eyes, their words, their emotions, more than you realized. You look back on your day. How many times did you change the way you spoke, shift your opinion, or adjust your feelings, just because you didn't want someone to be upset? A joke you were about to tell, then held back. A truth you wanted to say, but softened so it would sound nice. A moment you wanted to admit you were tired, but you ended up saying, "It's okay, I'm fine." Little by little, you become very skilled at editing yourself for each person, each group. So skilled that sometimes you no longer know which version is the real you. Some nights, you lie in bed, open your phone, and all you do is check who's online, who saw your story, who left you unseen. No one scolds you, no one directly hurts you, but one silent scene, one missing emoji, one delayed reply, and suddenly your heart drops a little. People call this emotional puppetry, when the outside world only needs to tug gently, and your emotions follow instantly. You smile when others seem pleased with you. You shrink when someone sounds distant. You worry when a message goes unanswered. You feel meaningless when you're overlooked in a conversation. And strangely, even when you realize this is happening, it's still incredibly hard to stop. It's like standing on a stage, rows of seats in front of you. Just one frown, and you lose your place. One person walking out, and you think, maybe I'm just not good enough. You live as if life were a performance, and your feelings are props others can kick without noticing. Marcus Aurelius once wrote a line that is calm, yet painfully true. If someone causes you pain, remember, it is not them, but your judgment of the event that hurts you. For many people, this sounds like a familiar philosophy, but on nights like this, it lands deeper. It's not truly the silence that hurts. It's the way you immediately reduce your own worth because of a tiny gap between two messages. There are types of strings that are very subtle. No one is manipulating you on purpose. You're the one handing them the strings and waiting to see which way they pull. A sigh from someone gives you take it as, they must be disappointed in me. A postponed plan gives you think, maybe I'm not important enough. Someone grows a little colder gives you tell yourself a whole story filled with the worst possibilities. Have you noticed that most of the time, people are simply busy, tired, distracted, or dealing with their own life? But in your mind, it instantly becomes proof that I'm no longer needed. I'm not enough. I'm being left behind. So you begin adjusting yourself constantly. They reply less, gives you share less, afraid of bothering them. They disappear often, gives you tell yourself not to show too much. They say I'm busy, gives you automatically move your feelings to the third, fourth, fifth place. Each time, another invisible string forms. No one else sees it, but you feel it very clearly. You become highly sensitive to every shift in someone's voice. If they sound quieter, you assume it has something to do with you. If they use fewer emojis, you feel the temperature drop. It's like you're using your own radar to scan every millimeter of their emotions, and your inner world reacts half a step behind theirs. Stoicism does not deny feelings. It doesn't ask you to harden, to numb yourself, or to ignore the world. It simply points out a soft, quiet truth. If your mind is always turned outward, if you live as though your main job is to satisfy the expectations of others, then sooner or later, you will forget what you want, what you like, who you are. Epictetus once said, "The first task of a free soul is to distinguish what is within your control and what is not." Other people's feelings, their thoughts, their busyness, their silence, are not within your control. But the way you interpret them, the story you tell yourself, the power you allow those things to have over your worth, that is entirely in your hands. The problem is, we have spent too many years living the other way around. Think back on a few small moments in your life, the times you said it's okay, even though you were clearly hurting. The times you laughed off an insensitive comment, then thought about it all night. The times you pretended you were fine with everything, just to avoid being seen as difficult. Every one of those moments was you choosing to hold everything inside, not because you were strong, but because you were afraid that if you showed your real emotions, someone might pull away, judge you, or feel uncomfortable. We often call that being respectful, but sometimes it's really just fear of rejection wrapped in a nicer, more acceptable name. And sometimes you're simply too used to letting others go first in conversations, in decisions, in choosing plans, choosing time, choosing how things feel. You're the flexible one, the accommodating one, the understanding one. Everyone praises you, yet when the night comes and you're alone, you feel like a shadow walking in other people's footsteps, standing inside their frame and disappearing the moment no one needs you. Stoicism doesn't ask you to live a cold life, detached from human connection. It just invites you to look gently at this. How much of your sadness actually comes from what others did, and how much comes from the story you told yourself afterward? Someone doesn't reply. The fact is simply, they didn't reply. Everything else, maybe they're tired of me, maybe I did something wrong, maybe I'm just not good enough, is what your mind adds on top. Someone says something clumsy. The fact is, they said something clumsy. The humiliation, the sting, the shrinking sense of worth that grows because you let the moment echo, repeat, take root. The pain doesn't live in what others do. It lives in the way your mind holds on to what they do, turns it over from every worst angle, and concludes, this must be proof that I'm not enough. Tonight, Give yourself a small moment of stillness, not to criticize yourself for living this way, but to softly acknowledge, maybe you've given too much power to others inside your inner world, power to define you, power to decide whether today feels good or bad, power to pull your mood up or push it down with just a few words on a screen. And maybe you've forgotten something simple. Your emotions were never meant to be puppets in anyone's hands. Seneca once wrote, "Anyone can hurt you if you stand still and hand them your heart." This is not a blame, it's a reminder that sometimes the reason we hurt isn't because others are cruel, but because we placed the softest parts of ourselves in their hands without any boundary at all. If you're lying there, listening to these words drift by, and a few faces or chat windows flash through your mind, moments when your heart pulled tight without warning, that's okay. You don't need to push them away. You don't need to pretend you're over it. You don't need to force forgiveness or let go right now. Just allow yourself to admit one small thing tonight. Maybe I've let my emotions be pulled by others' strings far longer than I realized. No blaming, no self-judgment, just a quiet recognition. Because the moment we see this clearly, a new space opens inside, a place where we can slowly, very slowly, begin to take those strings back. In the next part of the journey, we'll go deeper into something essential. It's not what others do that hurts you. It's the meaning you attach to what they do. Once you understand this, you'll find yourself taking far fewer things as personal attacks than you used to. And in that understanding, a strange kind of peace begins to return. There's something quite interesting about the mind. Two people can go through the exact same event, but one walks away barely affected, while the other feels like the sky has collapsed. Not because one is weak and the other strong, but because between the event and the heart lies a thin but incredibly powerful layer, the meaning we assign to it. Tonight, let's slow down a little. Let's sit with that thin layer, not to analyze it into clarity, but to blame ourselves less, blame others less, and understand, ever so gently, why something small can hurt so much. Think of a recent moment. Someone went silent on you. No messages, no calls, no explanation, if written on paper. The fact is simple. Person A didn't reply to my message for X days. But in your mind, it never stops there. The silence arrives, and suddenly, they must not value me anymore. I'm too much. That's why they're ignoring me. If I were better, this wouldn't happen. One event, but sometimes it gives birth to an entire self-accusing narrative. Epictetus once said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the opinions they form about things." We hear this line all the time, but when you place it inside a real night, a real wound, you see it differently. Often, what drains us isn't what happened, but the version of the story we replay in our minds again and again. Imagine two people living through the same disappointment. Someone made a promise, then didn't keep it. The first person thinks, they're probably really busy. I'll ask them about it later. They're sad. Yes, but not shattered. The second person thinks, I guess I'm not important enough for them to keep their word. I was stupid to believe them. The event is the same. The meaning is not, and that difference turns one moment into a scratch, and the other into a deep cut. You're not at fault for being the second type. No one willingly chooses this reaction. It often comes from old experiences, moments of being overlooked, compared, pushed aside, moments you cried and no one really listened, moments you tried to explain but were still misunderstood. So now, the moment anything feels similar, your heart retreats to its old position, and the old tape starts playing. I must be the problem. Stoicism never asks you to deny these feelings. It doesn't say, stop thinking like that. Stop being sensitive. It simply invites you to sit down. Look at the space between what happened and what it meant to you, and whisper, between these 2 points, there is always a choice. Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are pained by anything external, it is not the thing itself that troubles you, but your judgment about it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. At any moment is not a command. It's a doorway. A reminder that you're not as powerless against your own feelings as you've been taught to believe. Let's return to a very small example from any ordinary day. You share a long, honest message with someone you trust. You speak openly without hiding anything, and they reply with only a few words, yeah, hang in there. Or maybe just an emoji. The moment you see that reply, your heart might skip a beat. It feels like you just stood on a stage, poured your heart out in a long monologue, and the person in the audience only nodded out of politeness. The fact is, they replied briefly, with little emotion. But only a few seconds later, your mind is already at work. I really am too much. No one truly cares about what I'm going through. Maybe I should just stop talking altogether. You see, no one has to scold you. No one has to abandon you. You're already hard enough on yourself. If, in that moment, someone very gentle were sitting beside you, they might say something as simple as, the only thing we truly know right now is, they replied shortly, that's it, everything else. You're stitching onto it yourself. Hearing that, you might sit up and protest, but I can feel it. I'm not overthinking. You're right. That feeling is real. It deserves to be respected. It's just that sometimes, the story that comes attached to the feeling isn't as accurate as it seems. In Stoicism, there's a notion called impression. Those first flashes that rush into the mind, they arrive fast, hit hard, and very often, they're not something we consciously choose. Someone frowns, gives first impression. They're upset with me. A message goes unanswered, gives first impression. I don't matter. A no to something you asked gives first impression. I'm not good enough. These impressions, if we don't look back at them, are easily mistaken for facts. Stoicism doesn't ask you to shut them down. It simply suggests, before you believe them, pause for one beat. Breathe in slowly, breathe out slowly, and ask yourself, is this the truth, or just the first story my mind is telling, based on old wounds? That tiny pause can sometimes be the line between a sleepless night and a night where you feel just sad enough, but still able to close your eyes. You might be thinking, sounds nice, but how am I supposed to separate what happened from what it means? When a feeling comes, it just comes. I don't control that. You're half right. We can't control the arrival of emotion, but we can learn not to add extra heavy labels on top of it. If you're sad, let yourself be sad. If you feel small, let that feeling be there. If you feel abandoned, acknowledge it. But even as you say, yeah, I feel like I don't matter at all right now, you can still add one small sentence afterwards. This is how I feel at this moment. It doesn't have to be the whole truth. Just that one addition is enough to give your heart a little more space. Instead of being trapped in, this proves I'm meaningless, your experience shifts into a gentler frame. This is how I feel in this situation. At this time, it stops being a verdict and becomes more like a gust of wind passing through. It hits hard, it makes you cold, but you know the wind will move on. Marcus Aurelius had an interesting habit. Whenever something bothered him, he would break it down into very ordinary pieces. For example, a luxurious, beautiful dish would be described by him as the corpse of a fish, of a pig, of a bird. Not to be cynical, but to remind himself that beneath all the decoration, what he saw was just a collection of very basic parts. If we apply that to emotional pain, we can do something similar. Take everything apart into simple pieces. They didn't reply. Give simply. There was no reply. I feel hurt. Give simply a feeling passing through. I think I'm not good enough. Give simply a thought that formed nothing more. When you look at each piece like that, you don't deny any of them. You simply stop fusing them into one absolute statement about who you are. Instead of saying, "They went silent, this proves I'm not worthy," you say, "They went silent. I feel unworthy because of old wounds inside me. But the objective truth, I don't fully know yet. Inside that I don't know yet, there's a small sky of freedom," you might ask. But what if it really is true that they don't value me? If that's the case, then the sadness you feel is completely valid. No one expects you to be calm in the face of genuine coldness, but even then, you still have a choice. Instead of using their behavior as a measurement of your worth, you can see it as information about where this person should stand in your life. Information can hurt, but information doesn't have to become a sentence. They withdraw their care gives you have the right to hurt. And after the hurt, you also have the right to ask yourself, so should I keep placing my heart in their hands like this? That's the moment the meaning you assign shifts slightly from "there's something wrong with me" to "something is wrong in this relationship." And between those two interpretations, the path in front of you is completely different tonight. I'm not asking you to think positive. I'm not saying, stop overthinking. I just want to offer you a different angle. Each time a small action from someone hurts you, take a look and see, are you putting yourself into the role of the one who's wrong, the one who's less, the one who should just stay quiet, faster than you need to? You're not weak because a single emoji, a message, or a careless sentence ruins your night. You're simply carrying a lot of old stories, and your mind keeps using old data to explain what's happening now. Seeing that in yourself is its own kind of courage, not loud, not dramatic, just a very quiet honesty with your own heart. If right now you're remembering moments like a time you were a time you were rejected, a time you were forgotten in a group of friends, a time your whole family worried about someone else more than you, and you feel your throat tighten a little, that's okay. You can let that emotion run its full course. If you feel like crying, cry. If you only want to lie still, lie still. But when the first wave has passed, when your breathing slows down just a bit, try saying a few small sentences to yourself. What happened is one thing. The way I'm retelling it in my mind is another. Both are real to me right now, but I don't have to use this current story as the final definition of who I am. It's not a magic spell. It doesn't erase the sadness, but it quietly hands back to you a little bit of the power you once gave away, the power to choose how you interpret your own life. One day, when you've practiced separating what happened from the meaning you glued onto it, you'll notice something strange. The outside world is still the same. People can still be silent, busy, clumsy, careless, kind, warm, each in their own way. But inside, you no longer shake as violently as before. You still feel sad. You still feel let down. You still have nights where you feel small, but that sadness no longer comes with a sentence that says, "Because of this, I am worthless." It simply becomes, "I ran into someone else's limit." That hurts, but it doesn't define who I am. That's when you begin to touch the kind of freedom the Stoics talk about. Freedom is not "nothing can hurt me." Freedom is, no matter how much the world hurts me, I still keep one last right to retell my own story in a way that doesn't destroy me. In the next part of this journey, we'll go deeper into a very important root, the hunger for recognition, the thing that makes us cling to every glance, every message, every compliment, until we hand over the entire control panel of our emotions to other people. When you understand where that hunger comes from, you'll stop hating yourself for being so weak and start learning how to hold yourself instead, the way an adult gently holds a child inside who's gone far too long without being truly seen. But that's for later. For now, all you need to do is lie still and allow yourself to believe this. Your pain is not too much. It's just that some old stories in your head are speaking a little too loudly. Slowly, we'll learn how to turn their volume down. Together, there is a kind of exhaustion that's very hard to name. It's not the tiredness from working too much, not the fatigue from lack of sleep. It's the tiredness that comes from constantly trying to be seen by someone, to be chosen by someone, to be kept by someone. Do you recognize that in yourself? A small compliment can warm you for an entire day. A distracted look can drag your mood straight to the bottom. One "I'm proud of you" can bring tears to your eyes, because it feels like it's been so long since anyone has said that to you. Underneath what looks like being sensitive, there is often a long, unspoken hunger for recognition. From childhood, many of us learned that we had to be worthy to be loved, good to be praised, better to be noticed. Some children only heard warm words when they brought home high grades, when they did exactly what the adults wanted, when they didn't disturb, didn't cause trouble. Some children, every time they cried, were told, "There's nothing to cry about. Stop being so weak." Slowly, they learned to be safe, you have to shrink. To be praised, you have to play a certain role. To be allowed to stay, you have to be useful, pleasant, easy. Then those children grow up. They become considerate adults, but inside, a part of them is still starving to be seen, starving to be understood, starving to be recognized without having to exhaust themselves earning it. When this hunger is never named, it begins to seep into every relationship. You might recognize yourself in these pictures. You're the one who always replies to messages quickly, yet you accept being left unseen for hours, days. You always listen, comfort, explain, soothe. But when you're the one who's tired, you can't bring yourself to say it all, afraid you'll be too much. You're the one who checks in, plans, meets, keeps the connection alive. And if one day you stop, everything goes quiet as if it never existed. Each time that happens, you feel it clearly. If I don't keep trying, no one will keep me. That feeling is sad, humiliating, and heartbreaking all at once. But because you're so afraid of losing the few connections you have, you keep trying to show up, trying to give, trying to maintain. Not because you have energy to spare, but because you're hungry to know you matter to someone. In Stoicism, people talk a lot about dependence on others' gaze. They don't deny that human beings need connection and community. They simply point out, when you let your worth stand entirely on the foundation of other people's eyes, you turn yourself into a beggar in every relationship, even if on the surface you seem independent and composed. Seneca once wrote, "In essence, whoever lives for applause will die from silence." Applause here doesn't just mean big, public recognition. Sometimes it's just a few kind words, a handful of heart emojis, or a typing bubble appearing right when you need it. When we're too hungry for recognition, we become easily shaken by the smallest signals, a scene that lasts longer than usual, a message with fewer emojis than before, a day when they talk to others more than they talk to you. Each of these becomes data for the mind to conclude, I must not matter anymore. What makes this hunger dangerous is that it convinces us to accept things we never should have to accept. We easily abandon our own boundaries. We easily take the blame, even when deep down we know the other person is also responsible. We stay in relationships where we're always in the waiting position, waiting for a message, waiting for reassurance, waiting for one line that says, "I'm still here with you." And each time we wait like that, we lower ourselves a little more just to fit the small chair they've quietly assigned us. Maybe you've lived through a phase like this. You stayed close to someone who only needed to text free, want to meet for a bit, and you'd drop almost anything to go. You learned to read their mood from every phrase they typed. Are they happy, annoyed, bored? You adjusted yourself to every tiny shade of their emotion. When they needed you, you showed up. When they were busy, you faded into silence. When they wanted to share, you were the listener. When you wanted to talk, you paused and wondered, am I overdoing it? You didn't call it dependency. You called it love, giving your all, being genuine. But if one night you slowed everything down and really looked at the picture, you might hear a very small sentence echoing underneath it all. As long as they don't leave me, I'll be okay. And that sentence shows something important. You weren't just giving, you were also quietly begging. The Stoics did not want to live as beggars of emotion, not because of pride, but because they understood this. A soul that is always holding out its hands for validation will struggle to stand firm when life begins to shift. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, your value does not lie in others' praise or blame. If you live according to the best part of your nature, that is enough. It sounds simple, but when you place that line inside a heart that has lacked recognition since childhood, it cannot become reality overnight. Someone who has always had to earn love will find it very hard to believe I have worth simply because I exist. So if you notice you still cling to praise, still long to be acknowledged, still ache when you're forgotten, that doesn't mean you're not stoic enough. It simply means there is a part of you that is deeply human, deeply sincere, deeply fragile, and it has been lonely for a very, very long time. The gentlest thing you can do for yourself tonight is not to force yourself to need people less, but to admit, yes, I am hungry to be seen. Yes, I do measure my worth by how people treat me. Yes, being forgotten hurts me more than I like to admit. Admitting this does not make you weaker. It simply puts you in a more honest place with yourself. From that place, you can slowly begin to change the way you move through relationships without continuing to ignore what your inner world is asking for. This hunger for recognition has another face, overgiving, giving far more than your own capacity can hold. You may have felt this. You say yes to every request for help, even when your schedule is already full. You stay up late listening to someone pour out their pain, but when you're exhausted, you don't know who to turn to. You explain, comfort, support, becoming the place where many people come to offload. And in return, all you receive are a few quick thanks before everyone goes back to their own lives. What keeps you from stopping is not just kindness, but also a deep belief. If I become less useful, I'll be left behind. You give to gain one feeling. At least I still matter to someone. And every time you do that, you burn a little more of your own energy, like a candle placed on someone else's altar, while your own room grows darker and darker. Stoicism is not against giving. It simply asks one quiet question. Is this coming from the bright part of you or from the hungry part? If it comes from the bright part, you give because kindness is part of your nature, because you choose to, because you still have strength. And even if no one acknowledges it, you don't lower yourself. Then that giving is a beautiful gift. But if it comes from the hungry part, You give because you're afraid of losing your place, afraid of being seen as useless, afraid of being replaced someday, hoping to hear, "I couldn't have done this without you." Then each act of giving is actually you digging the hole under your own feet a little deeper. Tonight, as you lie still, you might call to mind one or two specific relationships, not to blame anyone, but to gently look at yourself and ask, what have I been giving that, deep down, I hoped would be exchanged for recognition? Maybe it was time. Maybe it was listening. Maybe it was effort, work, money. Maybe it was loyalty. All you need is to be honest with yourself. No sugarcoating your reasons. No labeling it because I'm a good person when underneath it was because I'm afraid of being left. Seeing this is already a big step, because from there, you begin to understand why you're so drained, why you're so easily hurt, and why it's so hard to walk away from places that are no longer really yours. Marcus Aurelius had a beautiful image for self-worth. He compared people to stones lying by a riverbank. The river, the opinions, praise, criticism, looks from others can rush, change direction, rise high, but the stone, if it knows what it is, still lies there, not dissolving just because the water is loud. You don't need to become cold to be like that stone. You can remain soft. You can still love. You can still tremble when someone touches an old wound. But through all of that, you hold on to one small, important awareness. I have value, even on days when no one says that to me. At first, this sentence will feel almost impossible to believe. You might hear it with doubt, with a bit of bitterness. But if each night, between unread messages and half-finished conversations, you repeat it to yourself as honestly as you can, very slowly, it will begin to take root, not the roots of arrogance, but the roots of peace. You no longer have to run everywhere begging for a stamp that says you are worthy. You connect because you want to. You give because it's a choice. You can walk away from places that treat you like a tool. And when someone does recognize you, you smile and say thank you, but you don't treat it as oxygen. In the next part of our journey, we'll go deeper into this question. Once you've seen your hunger for recognition, how do you slowly rebuild your boundaries so you no longer have to overgive, over-explain, just to earn someone's temporary presence in your life? But right now, all I'm asking is that you allow yourself one simple thing. Stop blaming yourself for needing people so much, because only when you stop fighting that hungry part can you gently lead it home. There is a very clear sign of this hunger for recognition, though we rarely notice it, that almost unbearable discomfort with being misunderstood. If someone seems to see you the wrong way, even just a little, you immediately rush in to explain. You type out long messages, delete them, rewrite them, trying to make sure they see your good intentions. You're afraid of being seen as uncaring. You're afraid of being thought of as difficult. You're afraid of being put into the box of negative person, dramatic person, problem. So you start over-explaining, explaining too much, explaining until you're out of breath. Sometimes it's over something very small. You didn't reply in time. You forgot a meeting. You said the wrong thing. You accidentally reacted to someone's story. Instead of saying, I'm sorry, and stopping there, you pull along a whole chain of it's really not what it looks like. It's just that lately, I just don't want you to think that It's like you're not only apologizing, you're desperately trying to protect your image in their mind at all costs. Beneath that is not just sincerity, it's fear. If they carry a bad version of me in their head, I won't be able to stand it. Other times, you overcare, caring for others far beyond what your heart can safely hold. You remember their birthday, but no one remembers yours. You notice every small shift in their mood, but when your own energy drops, no one asks, "Hey, are you okay lately?" You tell yourself, "I care, so I act. I don't need anything back." But if you're honest, deep down you still hope. At the very least, they'll see that I matter. At the very least, they won't leave me. And if one day, all that care still doesn't buy you the feeling of being kept, you don't just feel sad, you feel ashamed in front of yourself, and then the cycle begins again, afraid of losing them. You keep giving, keep trying, keep stretching yourself thin. From a Stoic perspective, all these over-behaviors share one root. We've placed our mood and our sense of self in other people's hands too much. Epictetus once said, "You become what you consistently give your attention to." If your attention is always locked on what they think of you, how they judge you, where you rank in their heart, then at some point, your entire inner world starts revolving around a mirror that's placed outside of you. Hearing all this, you might feel two streams of emotion running side by side. One part of you understands, "Yeah, this really does sound like me." Another part pushes back, "But if I stop explaining, stop trying, won't I lose everyone?" That fear is very real, and it deserves respect. Stoicism doesn't tell you from tomorrow on, "Stop explaining, stop caring." Those lines sound neat and tidy, but they don't touch the reality of a heart that has lived for years in a hunger for recognition. So tonight, let's take a very slow walk around that fear. Gently ask yourself, if one day I stopped over-explaining, who would actually leave? Some people might leave, it's true. There are relationships that only stay intact as long as you are the one constantly smoothing the path, constantly defending yourself, constantly lowering yourself to keep the peace. But if that's the case, are those really places where your heart can ever rest? You might answer, even if it's not peaceful, "At least, I still have someone." That answer is very real. Many people keep choosing exactly that because sometimes loneliness feels scarier than being treated half-heartedly. No one has the right to judge that choice, not even you. You don't need to scold yourself for staying as long as you did. It's just that, if one night, while you're lying here, listening to these words, a small thought flickers in your chest, "I wish I didn't have to try this hard just to stay beside someone," then that thought deserves to be heard. It might be the deepest part of you, quietly raising its hand, asking to live a different kind of life, a life where you no longer have to trade pieces of yourself just to remain. In Stoicism, there's often talk of keeping an inner distance from everything happening around you, not a cold distance, but an understanding. I and the way others see me are not the same thing. You can respect how others feel without accepting their impression of you as your final portrait. You can listen to feedback without reshaping yourself completely just to look more acceptable. You can apologize when you're wrong without dragging yourself around like a criminal just because someone is upset. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "If someone thinks badly of you, live in such a way that no one believes it is true." This doesn't tell you to argue back. It gently reminds you, instead of pouring your energy into fixing your image in someone else's mind, use that energy to live true to your own values. Time and the way you show up in many different situations will tell the rest of the story on its own. And if some people still cling to a distorted picture of you, even after you've lived with genuine kindness, then maybe they were never really interested in seeing you clearly in that case. Their leaving will hurt, but it may not truly be a loss. This hunger for recognition, at some level, was once your way of surviving when you were young. To stay safe, you had to read adults' expressions, had to be well behaved, had to stay flexible to avoid trouble. Those reactions saved you from many storms. They deserve gratitude, but now you're an adult. You have relationships, you're allowed to choose, and the survival patterns of the past can quietly become ropes that bind you. You're no longer living in the old house, but inside. You still treat the world as if you were dealing with the same people from back then. That's why you're always tense, always on guard, always afraid you're doing something wrong, without knowing exactly what it is. There is no quick way out of that state, but there are very small, very quiet shifts you can begin to make, if you want to. Not, starting tomorrow, I'll never over-explain again. But maybe just this. Next time you feel the urge to type a very long explanation to protect your image, give yourself 1 minute and put the phone down. Ask yourself, am I explaining because I truly need them to understand, or because I can't stand the thought of them seeing me in a way I don't like? If the answer is the second one, you might try cutting your message in half. Say what is necessary, and let the rest remain in silence. That silence is not a cold war. It is one moment where you choose not to sell your peace in exchange for a temporary image in someone else's head. The same goes for overgiving. Instead of setting a big goal, like, from now on, I'll never give that much again, you can move more slowly. Next time you're about to take on one more task, when you already feel exhausted inside, ask yourself, if I say no, will this person truly disappear from my life? If the answer is maybe, ask one more question. If a relationship can only stand when I keep saying yes, is it really a place I should stay for long? You don't have to decide right away. Just dare to ask. The very act of asking is already a tiny crack in the old mold you've been living in. The Stoics never promise that you'll stop feeling lonely once you depend less on recognition. In fact, in the beginning, you may feel lonelier when you start saying no to certain things. Some people will drift away, or they'll stay, but not as close as before. That does not feel good at all. It's like stepping out of a cramped house, stuffy, smoky, but warm and familiar, into an open yard that's wider, clearer, but at first, very cold. Many people turn back inside, close the door, and keep sitting in the old house. If you've done that before, it's okay. No one can blame you. But if this time you want to try standing a little longer in that yard, I'll sit with you. Not to push you forward, but to remind you, this cold will soften, and once your eyes adjust to the light, you'll realize you have more space than you ever imagined. At some point in this journey, you'll begin to taste a very strange feeling. The feeling of no longer having to strain so hard just to stay. You sit in a conversation and notice you don't need to talk so much to match the vibe anymore. You can listen, you can be quiet, you can let topics pass by without chasing every one of them in, still feel that you are here, fully present, you're in a relationship. And this time, when there's a misunderstanding, you choose to explain just enough. If they understand, that's good. If they still hold on to their old perspective, you feel sad, but you don't collapse. You no longer chase after them, begging them to believe in the good version of you. You step back, you watch how they treat you when you're no longer constantly proving yourself. And from there, you find out who is truly worthy of walking beside you for a long time. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, do not waste the rest of your life worrying about what others are doing, why they do it, what they say, what they think of you. Such things only distract you and cause you to lose your way. Losing your own way For a heart that's starving for recognition is not something rare. It's daily life, tonight. Just allow yourself to do one small thing. Turn your gaze from the outside world back toward a very quiet place inside. In the end, how do I want to live? How do I want to love? How do I want to give? So that one day, when I'm too tired and I sit down and look back, I no longer feel like I've abandoned myself. You might not be able to answer that question yet, but if it has already managed to echo within you, it means a part of you has begun to wake up, continuing this journey. We'll talk more clearly about how to observe yourself instead of just reacting, how to reset boundaries without feeling selfish, how to stop turning other people's emotions into a measurement of your own worth. But before we get there, I want you to carry one small sentence with you through this night. It's not because I'm weak that I need to be seen. It's because I've been alone with my pain for far too long. And if tonight you allow yourself to have that need for recognition from yourself, first with an imagined embrace, with a whisper, "Yeah, I get it. You're so tired, aren't you?" Then maybe that hunger will ease just a little before we walk on to the place where you learn to protect the quiet space inside you without having to build a wall of coldness against the world. There is a very strange phase on this journey. It's the moment you realize you've been emotionally dependent on others for too long. You've been hungry for recognition for too deeply. You've let the smallest of others' actions become enormous storms inside you, and yet you still don't know what to do with that realization. Are you supposed to completely change who you are tomorrow? Are you supposed to suddenly become cold, detached, ignore everything, build walls, withdraw into silence? Are you supposed to bleach out every feeling and become unmoved by life? Just imagining that is already exhausting. Stoicism doesn't invite you to live like that. It doesn't ask you to become a rock. It simply invites you to take one very small step, to be more awake with yourself, and redraw a few gentle boundaries. Not a rebellion, just a quiet rearrangement inside. Tonight, let's make things simpler. No need to set the goal from now on. No one will ever affect me again. All you need is to look a little more closely each time a feeling rises and start asking very small, very calm questions instead of rushing to react. That is the first step of self-awareness. Not the kind you gain from theories or books, but a living awareness, breathing and present in every tiny movement inside you. Think of a recent moment. Someone said something careless. You heard it. Your throat tightened, your heart shrank, and your mind instantly filled with 1,000 arguments or 1,000 self-criticisms. In the past, you would let the feeling carry you away completely. Either you reacted immediately, anger, confrontation, typing a long message, deleting it, rewriting it, then sending, or you swallowed it, laughed it off, while inside, another scratch was added tonight. We try something a little different. No immediate reaction, no immediate swallowing. Just pause for half a beat and observe yourself as if you were watching a very close friend who has just been hurt. You can ask, what layers are present in me right now? First layer, the feeling. For example, hurt, anger, shame, disappointment. Second layer, the story I'm telling myself. They don't respect me at all. I really am worthless. Everyone who gets close to me ends up annoyed. Third layer, the reaction I want to have. Wanting to text back and set things straight. Wanting to block them. Wanting to go silent forever. Wanting to prove I'm not what they think. Instead of charging straight into the third layer, self-awareness invites you to come back and look closely at the first two. What am I actually feeling? What story am I currently believing? The moment you can name those two, you are already a little less tangled up in them. Marcus Aurelius had a habit. Whenever a strong emotion arose, he didn't ask, "Why did they do that to me?" He asked, "What inside me is reacting right now?" That question shifts the focus from them to me, not to place blame on yourself, but to take back agency. If everything depends on them, all you can do is wait for them to change. But if you can see what inside me is being touched, then you can begin to care for that place, whether they change or not. Try a small exercise in imagination. Picture many smaller versions of yourself living inside you. There's a child who's always afraid of being left behind, a teenager who was once deeply misunderstood, a younger self who always had to push harder to be praised. Every time someone does something careless, one of those small versions jumps up and shouts, "It's happening again." If you're not self-aware, you'll let that small version take the wheel, sending messages that cut others, or turning the blade back on yourself. But if you can see, "Oh, the little one who's afraid of abandonment just woke up in me," then you have another choice. You can reach out and hold them, instead of letting them run wild and break everything. It sounds abstract, but it's actually very simple. It's just recognizing which part of your past is controlling your reaction in the present. Self-awareness is not a tool to control every feeling. It simply helps you stretch the space a little between something happens and I react. And that extra breath changes a lot. Instead of sending a long message while your heart is racing, you get the chance to send it 10 minutes later, or an hour later. Instead of swallowing everything and enduring it, you might choose a calmer moment to say, more clearly, "That comment really hurt me the other day." Instead of quickly concluding, "They clearly don't value me," you can shift it to, "The way they're acting is making me feel unvalued. I need to rethink the distance in this relationship." That is the moment boundaries begin to be redrawn, not with shouting, not with ultimatums, but simply through the sentences you choose to say to yourself. Boundaries, in the simplest sense, are your answers to 3 questions. What will I accept? What will I not accept? And if something I don't accept keeps happening, what will I do to protect myself without destroying myself? In the past, maybe you didn't have the right to choose. A child cannot set boundaries with adults the way adults set them with each other. They're forced to endure, forced to adapt. But now, you're an adult. You have the right to choose where you stay, who you stay close to, and what you allow into your personal space. The problem is, we often forget that, right? We're so used to playing the role of the one who can handle anything, that anyone can walk in, anyone can stay however they like, and we just let it happen. Setting boundaries doesn't mean building walls against everyone. It's more like installing a door on your own house. The house can still be open. You can still welcome people in, but not everyone gets to come and go as they please. And not everyone gets to do whatever they want inside. You have the right to feel tired and not reply to messages immediately. Not explain every decision in detail to people who weren't there for your journey. Say no to requests you know will take more from you than you can safely give. Step back from conversations where you're only ever the supporter, and no one remembers to ask how you are. Boundaries are how you tell life, "I value myself enough to stop letting everything push me around without limits." Epictetus once emphasized, "No one can harm you unless you give them permission." This line is easy to misunderstand as, "So everything is my fault." That's not what it means. Some behaviors are objectively wrong, careless, hurtful, cruel. They are worth feeling sad about, worth being angry over, worth leaving. What Epictetus was pointing to is this: After you see clearly what they've done, you still have the choice. Do I keep placing my heart here, hoping they will change? Or do I pull my mind and heart back, begin to heal, and adjust the distance so this pain no longer has the right to repeat itself over and over? That right is your boundary. Many people fear setting boundaries for a very understandable reason. They're afraid of being seen as cold, afraid of being labeled selfish, afraid of losing the few relationships they still have. But there is something everyone eventually realizes if they walk long enough. Every time you don't dare to set a boundary, you end up using yourself to patch what others lack. They lack self-awareness, gives you carry it. They lack responsibility, gives you cover for them. They lack sensitivity, gives you adjust yourself to fit. Over time, you are no longer you. You become the version of you that is useful to them at some point. The exhaustion isn't just about how hard you're trying. It's about the fact that you no longer know who you're living for by then. Awareness and boundaries are no longer optional. They become the only things that can keep you from wearing away completely. Setting boundaries in a Stoic spirit doesn't look like endless arguments. It looks like you slowly adjusting the way you respond to life. Instead of always saying yes, you learn to say, "Let me think about it." Instead of always being available whenever someone needs to talk, you ask yourself, do I actually have the energy to truly listen right now? If the answer is no, you can honestly say, I'm a bit tired today. Let me listen when I'm in a better space. That'll be better for both of us. The first few times you say this, you'll be scared, but each time you do, you're building a new message inside yourself. My feelings matter too. I wasn't born just to be everyone else's container. Some boundaries are very subtle. They exist at the level of a single text message. You don't have to respond immediately to every request, especially when you know this person only reaches out to you when they need to vent. Not because they genuinely care about your life. You can choose not to share every intimate detail of your world with people around whom you have never felt truly safe. You can go quiet when you feel a conversation turning into something that makes you feel smaller, lesser, judged. This silence is not punishment. It's a way of pulling yourself out of an unhealthy zone. You don't have to stay in every conversation just to prove that you're okay. Another kind of boundary, equally important, is this. Stop adding extra meanings to other people's actions. If someone is busy, they might not reply. If someone is overwhelmed, they might act clumsily. Your boundary is to tell yourself what they're doing says more about where they are on their journey than it does about my worth. From that vantage point, you stop dragging everything back into, what did I do wrong? If someone keeps canceling plans with you, you no longer rush to think, I must not be important. You can reframe it as, this person isn't good at keeping commitments. I'll place them in a different place in my life. Less expectation, less sharing of the things that really matter. You don't condemn them, but you also stop handing the most fragile parts of yourself into their care. Seneca once advised, choose carefully those you allow to walk deeply into your life. Do not let the crowd pass through your home and trample your inner garden just because you forgot to close the gate. Closing the gate is not isolation. It is an act of self-respect. You can still smile, still be courteous, still be kind to many people, but the deepest part of you, the place that holds your wounds, your dreams, your questions is not for everyone, and that is completely okay. You are not selfish for doing that. You're simply protecting the forest within from being chopped down by people who don't know how to walk gently. When self-awareness and boundaries begin to take shape, a small change slowly appears. You still feel, but you're no longer swept away as easily as before. An unfair criticism no longer costs you an entire week of sleep. Being forgotten once in a plan no longer makes you question your entire worth. Being misunderstood once no longer throws you into a crisis of who am I then? You still feel sad. You still feel disappointed. But within that sadness and disappointment, another voice is slowly growing. This time, I'm not going to let myself free fall the way I used to. That voice is the small beginning of Stoic self-mastery taking root in you, of course. There will be people who don't like this new, boundaried version of you. When you no longer reply instantly, they may get annoyed. When you say, I can't do that, they may say, you're not as nice as you used to be. When you stop over-explaining, they might complain, you've changed. Those reactions can shake you. You might start asking yourself, maybe I really am getting worse. But if you look deeper, you'll see truly mature people, truly healthy relationships will respect your new boundaries, even if they need time to adjust. Only the connections built on the foundation of you always have to show up for me, while I never have to look at myself will be disturbed by that change. And maybe having a few of those connections fall away will feel both sad and like a release. Stoicism doesn't promise that once you set boundaries, you'll never be hurt again. It simply offers a different picture. Instead of being a puppet jerked around by every glance, you become the one holding your own strings. Instead of a room with doors flung wide open for anyone to walk in and out at any time, you become a house with a door, a yard, a path, and a private garden. Instead of living with the constant sense that I always have to do something to be allowed to stay, you slowly move toward this feeling. If someone stays beside me when I am fully myself, that is a blessing. If they don't, I still have me. From here, the next step of our journey leads us into a deeper place, the strength of stillness, of non-reaction, and of leaving at the right time. Not the stillness of avoidance, but the stillness of someone who knows where they stand, when to stay and when to let go. We'll sit together a little longer with those silences that no longer mean being powerless, but are the calm choices of someone slowly reclaiming their own inner freedom. There are nights when what exhausts you is not what happened, but all the things you wanted to say and held back. You type out a long message, then erase it. You think of 100 possible replies, then end up sending nothing or just a single emoji on the outside. You look quiet, but inside, there's a loud argument between two parts of you. One part wants to say everything and make it fair. The other part just wants to be done, to walk away. If tonight you're standing at exactly that crossroads, then this part is for you. We've already talked about how you tie your feelings to other people, how hungry you are to be recognized, and how you're beginning to redraw your boundaries. The next step is to practice a skill that is both very gentle and very difficult: stillness and non-reaction. Not because you don't care, but because you choose to protect your inner peace in life. There are emotional games you're invited into all the time. A little sarcastic comment, a vague, indirect status, a silence full of calculation, a half-hearted no, I'm fine, when it's obvious they're not. All of these are like tickets, inviting you into a spiral of explaining, guessing, sulking, pushing and pulling, proving in the past. Maybe you were used to accepting every ticket, asterisk. If there was conflict, you had to show up. If there was misunderstanding, you had to clear it up. If someone went quiet, you felt you had to do something to break the silence. You thought that was responsibility. You thought that was maintaining the relationship. You thought that if you didn't do it, everything would fall apart. But as time went on, you became tired of the kinds of conversations where you talk a lot, but the other person only listens to not to understand. You explain in detail, yet still end up with the same label pinned on you. You try to keep the peace, while inside you get heavier and heavier gradually. You realize a sad truth. Not every conversation is built for mutual understanding. Some exchanges exist just so the other person can unload, dump their emotions, or find a stage to prove they're right. And if that's the case, no matter how hard you try, the outcome won't really change. Stoicism doesn't encourage silent wars. It doesn't tell you to hide or to freeze everything. It simply reminds you of something very simple. Not every invitation to argue has to be accepted. Seneca once wrote that a wise person does not let their mind be dragged into every conflict. Like a child lured into chasing every loud noise, you can imagine that every time you rush to react, you're handing someone else the remote control to your emotional state. They say one more thing, and your waves rise again. They go quiet, and you sink into a sea of questions. They throw out an attitude, and you sit there untangling knots they tied in the first place. Over time, you lose the ability to live peacefully on your own, because your mind is always waiting to see what they'll do today so I can react to it. Stillness, in the Stoic sense, is not silent treatment to make the other person feel guilty, nor is it silence used as revenge. It is a different kind of quiet. Silence because you no longer wish to play the game, not the game with them, but the game with your own mind, the game of always needing to win, needing to be right, needing to be understood, needing to say the last word. Think back to a recent argument. If you slow it down and replay it, you may notice some things you said weren't to help them understand, but to make them hurt as much as you were hurting. Some extra explanations you added. You already knew deep inside they had no intention of truly hearing. There were moments you knew you should stop, but your ego refused, so you kept going in later. You lay there thinking, I wish I'd stayed quiet then. In those moments, stillness isn't about being emotionless. It's the ability to stop pouring fuel on a fire. You can already see clearly. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, you will never regret having remained calm, but you will often regret having spoken too much in anger. It sounds simple, but to live that way, you have to accept a sacrifice. The sacrifice of needing to win right now, when you are silent at the right time. There will be many moments when the other person thinks you lost. You were scared, you were weak, but only you will know, this time, you chose long-term peace over short-term satisfaction. You chose to keep your respect instead of stepping into a tug-of-war that leaves both of you smaller at the end. However, for this kind of silence not to turn into repression, one thing is crucial. You may be quiet on the outside, but inside there must be a place where you tell yourself the truth. If you're silent with them, then go home and grit your teeth, blame yourself, and swallow everything. That is not stillness. That is abandoning yourself. Stillness is, I don't say more to the other person, because saying more will only make things worse. But I will speak honestly to myself. That comment hurt me. This relationship doesn't feel safe right now. I deserve to be listened to more than this. And from those honest sentences, I make a decision to keep my distance, to reduce contact, or even to leave. Leaving without closure is one of life's hardest lessons, because inside, each of us is a part that desperately wants a neat final scene. Sitting down, talking everything through, finally understanding each other. looking into each other's eyes, hearing an apology, receiving one clear acknowledgement, I was wrong. We believe that if we could have that last scene, we'd feel less haunted. The wound would close more cleanly. But the truth is, many relationships never grant us that ending. Some people exit with a short, blunt message. Some people disappear in silence. Some connections simply fade, wear thin, and dry up, without any clear full stop. And if we keep waiting for closure, we end up standing at the gate forever, staring at a house no one lives in anymore, asking why, until we ourselves are utterly exhausted. Epictetus once said something that at first sounds cold, but is in fact deeply freeing. Do not look for explanations from those who no longer wish to be present in your life. It's not because they have nothing to explain. It's because your choice to stay in the waiting position hurts you again and again. Demanding closure from someone who has already turned away is like standing in front of a tightly closed door and hoping it will be moved to tears and open itself. Real closure often doesn't come from someone else's words, but from the moment you say to yourself, I'm probably never going to get a full explanation, but I still have the right to close this chapter, because continuing to stand here and wait is costing me the rest of my life. That doesn't mean you have to pretend you were never hurt. You can remember, you can miss. You can cry many times over the things that were never explained, but in between those waves of emotion, you can hold on to one foundational sentence. Not every wound receives an apology, but I can apologize to myself for staying too long in a place that was no longer mine, and from there, move on. That is a form of closure that is silent, but deeply mature. Another aspect of the strength of stillness is refusing to explain yourself just to be understood at any cost. There is a very thin line between healthy communication and begging for validation. Can explain yourself so that someone you value has more context about who you are, so the relationship can be cleaner. So both of you don't have to carry unnecessary misunderstandings. But if every time you're misunderstood, you find yourself in this position, sending long paragraphs over and over, their replies are short, cold, indifferent. The more you explain, the more material they collect to twist you around. Then maybe that is no longer communication. Maybe you're trying to buy your right to stay by convincing them that you're worthy. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, live well. Let your life and your actions be your explanation. This doesn't deny the importance of speaking your feelings, but it invites you to shift your focus. Instead of obsessively polishing every sentence so others will adjust the image of you in their mind, focus on living in a way that allows you to look at yourself without shame. Those who truly want to understand, you will see it over time. Those who don't, no matter how many languages you speak, will cling to the version of you that is most convenient for them. And when it's like that, withdrawing into silence is no longer a defeat. It becomes an act of self-respect. Silence, non-reaction, leaving at the right time. All of these only truly mean something when they are paired with one thing: a heart that stays soft. You don't need to turn yourself into someone cold. You don't need to pin a sign on your forehead that says from now on, I don't need anyone. The stillness that Stoicism points toward is the stillness of someone who knows they can still love, still trust, still open up, but no longer let the shifting moods of others smash them as easily as before. You still pick up the phone when someone you love calls you. Still reply when people who care about you message you. You still smile, still share stories, still listen. But somewhere in your heart, you keep a very quiet place that says, If one day these things are no longer here, I will be very sad, but I will still have myself. I will not lose myself again just because someone leaves. When you begin practicing stillness, the first days feel unstable. You stay quiet in the face of an unfair comment, then go home and argue with them in your head all evening. You decide not to text again. Then, a few hours later, your fingers itch to type. Actually, what I meant was, you tell yourself you won't ask for closure, but you still scroll back through old chats, checking if there's anything you forgot to clarify. All of these going back moments don't mean you've failed. They simply show how strong your old patterns still are. What matters is not that you haven't done it perfectly, but that each time you notice, you gently return to your original choice. This time, I choose peace over winning. This time, I choose to save my energy for healing, rather than pour it into a place that has already proven it's no longer safe. One day, you'll notice a very small but precious change in a situation where before you would have exploded. Now you're able to take a deep breath, say one short sentence, or say nothing at all, and go do something else. Others might think you're letting it slide, but you know you're not letting it slide. You're simply choosing not to let it take over your entire mind. Where there used to be a storm, there is now a lake still capable of ripples, but no longer pulling everything into its center. And on that lake's surface, for the first time in a very long time, you start to see your own face clearly. Asterisk, tonight, if you're torn between saying more or staying silent, between staying or leaving, I don't have ready-made answers. No one but you can decide that. All I have are a few questions for you to carry with you as you lie down. Close your eyes and listen for which voice inside speaks louder. If I say more, do I genuinely want to connect, or am I trying to prove something? If I leave, am I running away, or am I protecting the part of me that's been abandoned too many times? If I stay silent, is it because I'm afraid, or because I know speaking more will only pull me further away from myself? No need to answer right away. No need to force yourself to be right. Just for tonight, in between the quiet moments, try to believe this. There is a kind of strength that doesn't make noise, doesn't need applause, doesn't need anyone to say, wow. The strength of someone who knows when to speak, when to be silent, when to stay, and when to walk away with calm. From here, we slowly step into a wide landscape. Detachment, the art of stepping back from dependency, without stepping away from your own feelings. That will be the story of part 6, when you still love, still care, still show up, but no longer allow anyone to press a single button and control your entire inner world. In that place, peace doesn't come from no one can hurt me anymore, but from no one owns my heart completely except me. There is a very quiet fear. We're afraid that if we become less dependent, less attached, less reactive to others, our feelings will fade, will become cold, and will no longer know how to love deeply. That's why many people hear the word detachment and feel uneasy. It sounds like cutting off, like letting everything go, like a distant land reserved only for those who no longer hurt, no longer need, no longer tremble. But in the Stoic spirit, detachment is not pulling all your feelings out of life. On the contrary, it's how you can feel more fully without being swept away by every wave from the outside. Detachment is not loving anymore. Detachment is, you still love, but you don't lose yourself. Look back over the journey from the start of this video until now, from letting your emotions rest in other people's hands, to seeing the stories you attach to their actions. to recognizing your hunger to be acknowledged, to beginning to draw boundaries, choosing timely silence, choosing to leave when you must. None of this is meant to pull you out of life. It's to prepare you for a new phase. The phase where you show up in your own life as a presence, clear, grounded, whole, no longer just a chain reaction to everyone else. Detachment is the shift from being controlled to having a choice, not a choice over what happens, but a choice over who you will be in the middle of it. In the past, maybe you loved in a way that when they were happy, you were twice as happy. When they pulled away, you fell into freefall. When their message arrived, gives you felt lovable. When they were silent, gives you felt meaningless. When they praised you, gives you felt worthy. When they were distant, gives you felt awful. Love, then, was not just connection. It was also a mirror reflecting your worth, and that mirror was always in someone else's hands. The moment they turned it away, you couldn't see yourself anymore. Detachment doesn't ask you to throw that mirror away overnight. It simply reminds you that there's another mirror you haven't used in a very long time, the mirror inside. Stoicism always returns to one point. Your true nature lives within you, not in whatever others project onto you. Marcus Aurelius once whispered to himself, "Do not let your soul become the result of other people's moods." In other words, detachment is when you start looking at yourself before you look at someone else's face. They don't reply, "You're still sad," but you no longer jump straight to, "I'm not worth anything." Their attitude changes. You're still disappointed, but you know, the way they've changed says more about them than about my value. They care about you, you still feel warm, but you no longer place your entire breath in the palm of their hand. You still love, still feel, still miss, but beneath it all, you hold one very quiet sentence: I still have me. Detachment is not about blocking yourself from pain. A heart that can love will always be a heart that can hurt. That's natural. It's just that instead of letting that pain decide the entire story of your life, you start seeing it as one part of a much larger picture. In the past, one moment of being forgotten could make you question your entire being. Now, with that same feeling of being forgotten, detachment helps you place it into a different sentence. This hurts, but it's not because I'm worthless. It's because I placed my heart where the other person was never mature enough to hold it. The story turns slightly, but the direction of the pain changes. It's no longer a blade driven into yourself, but a cut that helps you see the truth of the relationship, and from there, choose a different distance. Epictetus once said, "Love as if the one you love could leave at any moment." At first hearing, it sounds sad, even cold. But if you look deeper, it isn't a call to live in fear. It's a reminder. Don't let your love become the reason you hand someone else the full power to make you collapse. When you love someone in the spirit of detachment, you don't love them less. You simply control less, demand less, that they fill every empty space in you. Stop turning them into the center of your universe. Stop using their reactions as the sole measure of your existence. You give them the right to be themselves, with their limits, flaws, and softness, and you keep for yourself the right to decide whether to stay or to leave if those limits keep wounding you over and over. Detachment doesn't kill attachment, it pulls you out of total clinging. Attachment is, with you, I'm very happy. Without you, I still have my own path. Clinging is, if you leave, I have nothing. Someone living in clinging will panic at every sign of change, a few fewer messages, a postponed plan, a short, dry reply. Detachment doesn't stop the sting, but it keeps you from having to run around putting out every fire, from having to strip your own skin to patch other people's holes. You might say, "I feel really insecure," but after that, you don't fall to your knees inside and beg, "Please, don't leave me." You add one more sentence, "And if this insecurity keeps repeating itself, I will have to go, even though I still care deeply." That is detachment, the courage to leave, even when you still love. So you never have to leave yourself one more time. Another sign of detachment is the ability to sit with your feelings without immediately reaching for someone else to pull you out of them in the past. Maybe every time you were sad, you would instantly pick up your phone, looking for someone to talk to, something to watch, some way to forget. Not because you were weak, but because no one ever showed you how to sit with a feeling safely. Detachment, in the Stoic spirit, does not tell you to suffer alone in isolation. It simply invites you, sometimes before you call someone, before you open an endless stream of content, to fill the silence, to place your hand on your chest and say to yourself, first, yeah, I'm really sad right now. Let me be here with this sadness for a bit. Then, if I still need it, I'll reach out to someone I trust. You don't deny your need to be heard. You simply stop handing the entire job of saving you to someone else right away. You give yourself the chance to see that you can walk a small part of the road on your own, and those small stretches over time turn into a new kind of trust. I'm not as fragile as I thought I was, Marcus Aurelius once wrote. A free soul is a soul that does not hang itself on what is uncertain. The Stoics do not deny that everything is impermanent: relationships, work, emotions, promises, plans. Detachment is how we learn to live inside that impermanence without shrinking from fear, and without throwing ourselves out so far that anyone who touches us can tear off a piece of our soul to carry away. You gradually get used to the idea that today they're close, tomorrow they might be distant, and that could be for 100 reasons. Not always because of you. Today they care, tomorrow they're busy, and keeping a connection alive is the responsibility of two people, not just you. Today you are loved, tomorrow nothing is guaranteed, but no matter what happens, you are determined never to go back to a life where someone else's emotions are the central axis of your world. Detachment is not about standing outside of life as a spectator. It doesn't turn you into someone who knows everything but is too afraid to step in. On the contrary, when you're less afraid of being swept away, you step into relationships more lightly. You dare to be more honest, because you're no longer terrified of someone disliking your true self. You dare to love more clearly, because you know that even if it hurts later, you now have inner tools to stand up again. You dare to leave sooner from places where you constantly have to strain, because you no longer live in the fear of what if I never find anyone else. Detachment doesn't kill hope. It simply stops your hope from clinging too tightly to one particular face, and stretches it wider toward your own capacity to live, to love, and to heal. Seneca used a beautiful image. He said we should be like a sailor who ties his boat to the dock, but always keeps a small knife in hand when the weather is calm. The rope keeps the boat safe, but if a storm hits, the water churns, and the boat is at risk of being dragged under with the pier. The sailor must be ready to cut the rope, not because he hates the dock, but because the boat still has oceans to cross. Relationships are the same. Attachment is the rope. It's needed. It's beautiful. It anchors us. It gives us a place to return to. But detachment is the small knife that lets us cut the rope when the dock is no longer safe. when we realize staying there only makes us sink, fade, and disappear in our own eyes. Cutting the rope always hurts, but sometimes it is the only way to keep the boat, the deepest part of you, moving forward. The highest point of inner freedom, in the Stoic sense, is not the state of "no one can ever touch me again." You still live in the world. You're still affected by things. You still have days so heavy you don't want to think about anything at all. The highest point here is something much simpler. No one can hurt you so deeply that you turn back and betray yourself again. Unless you hand them that power, people can treat you badly. But you don't use that as a reason to belittle yourself, to torture yourself, to say cruel things to yourself. People can leave, but you don't use that to scoop up all the blame and conclude, "I must not be someone worth staying for." People can misunderstand you, but you don't lose the quiet truth inside. You know how you have lived. By now, we've walked through the whole circle of this video, from letting others hold the strings of your emotions, to noticing the stories you tell yourself, to naming your hunger for recognition, to rebuilding boundaries, learning how to be silent, learning how to leave, and finally, arriving at a softer but steadier place, detachment, where you still feel, still love, still grieve, but you no longer lose yourself inside all of it, ending when you return to be the presence in your own life. You've stayed until these last minutes. It means that somewhere inside you there is a part that genuinely wants to feel lighter. Not lighter in the sense of everything will be fine, just don't worry, but lighter in the sense of, maybe I can't change other people, but I can stop turning my back on myself tonight. I'm not expecting you to wake up tomorrow as a completely new version of yourself. No more pain, no more sensitivity, no more being shaken by anyone. We don't need a total transformation. We just need a very small shift inside, from reacting gives to observing, from replaying the old story gives to trying a gentler interpretation, from begging to be seen gives to recognizing yourself first, from straining to stay gives to choosing places where you don't have to trade pieces of yourself, from clinging gives to loving while knowing you can still stand if one day you have to walk away. If even one of these tiny shifts starts to happen in you, no matter how small, no matter if no one notices, no matter if no one praises you, then this journey has already begun. Marcus Aurelius used to remind himself each morning, today, people may be ungrateful, selfish, rude, but all of them are just souls who have not yet seen themselves clearly. Tonight, you can gently rewrite that sentence for your own heart. Today, maybe someone was careless with me, maybe someone left, maybe someone didn't choose me, but none of that tells the full story of my worth. You don't have to be strong right away. You don't have to forgive right away. You don't have to be enlightened right away. All you need in this quiet moment is to let yourself become someone who stands on your side, even if it's just 1% more than yesterday from now on. Whenever something hurts, you might try whispering a few small sentences to yourself before you drift into sleep. My feelings are real. The story I'm believing right now might not be the whole truth. I have the right to change the distance. I have the right to leave places that require me to betray myself. I still have me, even if no one else stays. These sentences are not magic spells. They won't erase every wound, but they are like small candles, lit inside a room that has been dark for a very long time. They don't have to flood everything with light. They just need to shine enough for you to see you're still here. There is still a path, and you still have the right to choose how you'll keep walking. Tonight, If faces appear as you close your eyes, old chat threads, unsent words, moments where you felt yourself shrink, that's okay. Let them pass by like clouds. You don't need to pull them back to analyze. You don't need to replay the scenes. You don't need to win inside your imagination. Just keep one last image before you fall asleep. You, sitting in a quiet room, one hand on your chest, and you are there. As the one person who does not leave you. Not a perfect person, not someone who never makes mistakes, just someone willing to walk with you through the unsteady days from that small but very real place. Stoic-style freedom begins to sprout. Thank you for letting lucid dream, sleep, and science stories sit beside you tonight, if you can. Let these words fade gently into the background of your mind like a thin layer of mist. The rest, leave to sleep. Let it hold you so that tomorrow, even if the world is exactly the same, something inside you feels just a little lighter, and that alone is enough for one night. The rest will continue on another evening.